peeps! So I figured a little bit of a lighter video, more like what I'm doing in my personal time, just to kind of keep myself occupied, not go too stir crazy, and also just like general some books that I'm trying to catch up on and some poetry, etc. Now there is going to be uploaded, excuse me, very soon to the channel. Actually, it may upload before this one. Bedtime Stories Poetry Edition, which will include some of the poetry books that are here. But we're just going to do kind of like a witchy chat about that. And then I figured I would just also mention, if you're really feeling like a high sense of panic right now. Oops, this is in front of the microphone. I should probably move that, huh, guys? If you're feeling a high sense of panic right now or high anxiety and you're struggling with like coming down off of that, I have found the White Light Oracle by Alana Fairchild to be super helpful in just like helping me to calm down and to relax and to trust the process and everything that's happening in this experience, to just kind of flow with that energy as opposed to resisting it and bumping up against that in a way that's not helpful for the journey. So that's very helpful. So if you're finding that your panic level or your anxiety kind of like comes in waves and it's really high, that can be a really nice deck to help you, you know, kind of get grounded back in your body and understand that there's reasons and there's a way to flow through this time. Tea break. Okay, so I've talked about the Line Starter Tarot a lot, and I have that here on the table. Also, the Pamela Coleman Smith edition of the Rider-Waite-Smith Tarot, which I purchased because I'm working through the mentoring program with a student, and this deck was necessary for it. And I have not used straight up OG Rider-Waite-Smith in a while, and so it's been interesting trying to break this deck in. Is like such a struggle for me. There's the death card at the bottom of the deck, of course. And so breaking this puppy in has been really difficult, and I'm determined that by the time I get to the end of this mentoring process with this student, which when I mentor, it's usually, I don't know, 2 or 3 months, I feel like it always ends up being, that this deck will be broken in by then. So it's been interesting going back to the original imagery that, honestly, while it's a great touchstone to teach from, doesn't really speak to me. It's been interesting to see what type of readings I've been giving with that. So just a little sharing there. So poetry is a really big deal for me. My notes from my son. Poetry is a really big deal for me, as many of you know, and knowing that I'm, you know, was going to have all this kind of extra time that I wasn't planning on for, you know, time that you're not out being social or connecting with people in person. It's an opportunity to kind of get some of those things done that we've had on our lists, for sure. And for me, poetry is a really healing thing. It's also a very spiritual experience. I should add, I have a collected works of David Whyte that I forgot to bring up here that is on my list to also peruse and sit with the poetry. So when I read poetry, I don't tend to read it in chronological order. I tend to just open the book and see what comes through as a reading. It's kind of like working with cards, honestly. And I always find that I get like just the right poem to kind of provoke me or to help me to feel understood and loved and to move through whatever the experience is. This time of life for all of us has proven to be no different for me. So I have on my list of poetry books to work my way through again, or for the first time, I'm going to start with Sonia Vitomsky's Saltage for Curing, because I just got this book and it is amazeballs, guys. It's so good. So Saltage for Curing by Sonia Vitomsky is featured in the Bedtime Stories, which will upload soon to the channel, and it's just absolutely divine. There is a pagan perspective here, but you don't have to be pagan to enjoy this and to really just let the wisdom of the sacred feminine, loss and emotions and just everything that makes up a life just really flows in that collection of poems so beautifully. And Sonia's work is just so moving. So I'm like loving that so much, and I know it's going to be featured on the channel quite a bit. I have Holocaust poetry, a collection. I was gifted this a couple years ago, and I haven't really fully sunk my teeth into this. So this is more of a sit down, chop wood, carry water kind of thing to like just reacquaint myself with that lens, which really in a lot of ways, dealing with what we're dealing with now, it's almost like coming back around in some ways to, what do you do when you have no control over something? When you have no control over what's happening to you, to your body in this life. So here's one. I'll do a really quick one. Smoke rose. Smoke rose in the garden. God watched from above, and fear walked in the cool of the day. And that's by Yaz Kest. I hope that I'm not butchering that. It's on page 179 in the book Holocaust Poetry, if you're interested in purchasing that. But these are definitely ones that, so when I read poetry too, I like to sit with my journal and just kind of like let whatever comes up emotionally be expressed on my journal pages. And, sometimes I take notes in my books. I'm a really big believer in that. So, also the book Don't Call Us Dead by Denez Smith, or to how raw his poetry is and how truthful it is. And it's really, really beautiful. It brings me to tears quite a few times when I read his work. So this one is really just, it's so stunning. Such a stunning collection of poetry, and really, really, again, thought-provoking, fresh perspective to look at life experience with, to understand human experience from this space. So this one's really, really beautiful. I've talked about Robert Winter so often on this channel. I've read his poetry in some of my videos. I love his works. And he's not a very well-known poet. He passed away a long time ago. But this collection, his The Sanity of Earth and Grass, the complete poems of Robert Winter, is hard to find. One of my clients, a very wonderful older male, wanted me to experience his work quite a few years ago now, and so he searched this first edition down for me and gifted it to me for my birthday one year, and it's to this day one of the most touching, beautiful presents I've ever received. Robert's poetry and his lens, because he was paralyzed from a swimming accident at 16, is also one that allows us to see things from a fresh perspective. And there's a sense of solitude and loneliness and aloneness in his poems that just, again, bring me to tears. So Robert Winter's The Sanity of Earth and Grass is something that I'm going to be exploring over the next few weeks. Y'all know I love Just Mind's poetry. His most recent work, One Anthem, I believe it's his most recent. Let's double check that. 2015. It's close to, if not his most recent. One Anthem. This is another beautiful collection, very much from a lens of solitude, but deep connection to the earth. Beautiful, beautiful. The Quiet Room by Wendy Rannon. Now, it's interesting, this collection I purchased when I lived in Portland, and she's known as like a local poet there, so I think the bookstore had this on sale or it was on display or something like that, and I read two poems that like absolutely just spoke to me. And then when I got the book home and I really sat with it, sat with some of the poems, I wasn't as overwhelmed with the entire collection as, say, Just Mind's or Denez Smith's. But there are a few in here that are really, really potent, and I reread those in times of self-doubt, to be honest with you. So this speaks very well to finding one's strength and sense of self-worth again. And also the poet, she miscarried a great deal, I believe. There's certainly that feeling of that experience in the work as well. So there's another lens to look through the world with as well. And then, of course, Melissa Broder. You guys know I love her work. Scarecrow is like my favorite collection of her poetry. And she's just so irreverent, and like, she's a Pisces, so she's fucked up, and she's she's moving, trying to find her way through the world and find her sense of purpose. And you just feel like you're with her. And she is a voice to like those moments when we feel like profoundly fucked up. And just like being in those moments instead of trying to shame ourselves out of them. So Scarecrow is another one that I will be enjoying all the way through. Okay, so I'm going to move now more into books. I don't have like a ton because honestly, my book on FDR, as many of you know, or some of you know, I have an obsession with FDR. So I like to reread some of his biographies when I have dark moments or moments of fear or feel alone. There's something about that Aquarius that, I don't know. I love reading about FDR. So that book is on my list, but I've like shown that book in so many videos. I didn't feel like I really needed to put that again in this video, but because it is such a book that I reread, and I reread Tolstoy a lot too, so some of his works I'll also be kind of pulling from, but I'm undecided about which one I want to go to right now. So yeah, so those books are not here, but they're there. They're books that I'm, pulling on to help me move through this time. For my son and I, though, we are going to reread Fortunately the Milk by Neil Gaiman, which is like a wonderful comic relief. So if you need something like that to share with your family members, or just you need a chuckle, this is like such a great story. And the illustrations are just awesome. The illustrations are super awesome. My son and I always get super inspired, and we end up like drawing in our journals after we read that. So Fortunately the Milk is on our list. I am rereading Furious Love, the letters of Elizabeth Taylor and Richard Burton and the Marriage of the Century. So along with FDR, I have a little Liz Taylor and Richard Burton obsession too. So I'm going to enjoy that in my free time. The other book these two books I haven't finished. I've had them for some time and I have not moved all the way through them. So Michael Anderson's collection of short stories, The Sea Beast Takes a Lover, is on my list. I found the first two a little bit difficult, so I'm interested to see if I can move through, now that I'm kind of having to be in a quieter space, if I can move through the rest of the book well. So, and then The Summer Before the War, which is about World War I, by Helen Simonson. Interested to see, like, again, I got 232 pages in. This was also a Portland book. And then I didn't get any farther. So I'd like to finish this one up, just because I'm one of those people that when I start a book, I like to finish it. I don't like to leave a book unfinished on my shelf. It just it doesn't feel good to me. I can't do that, guys. I just can't. Okay. So this book I haven't read at all. This is new. I just purchased it. So this is like my, okay, here's something new, completely fresh, and I want to give myself some time to read this. It's called The 10,000 Doors of January by Alex E. Harrow. So here's the little blurb. In a sprawling mansion filled with peculiar treasures, January Scalar is a curiosity herself. As a ward of the wealthy Mr. Locke, she feels little different from the artifacts that decorate the halls. Carefully maintained, largely ignored, and utterly out of place. Then she finds a strange book, a book that carries the scent of other worlds and tells a tale of secret doors of love, of adventure, and danger. Each page turn reveals impossible truths about the world, and January discovers a story increasingly entwined with her own. So, let me know if you guys have read this and you liked it, but I am super excited to read this. And also the cover is really gorgeous. And I will say I'm a little bit basic, and I do love a beautiful book cover. If it's gorgeous like this, I will end up purchasing it. So these are my like fun books that are just for me, not associated with work in any way for me, not associated with learning something, but just like a way for me to kind of unplug, come back to self-care, and take a breath as I move through this time, just as all of you are moving through this time too. I will do a separate video on coloring books, because I know for my coloring peeps out there, you're wondering what books I'm going to be coloring in. I am most definitely coloring, just as you are, I'm sure, but I'll do a separate video on that so that people who don't want to check that out don't feel like they have to sit through that in order to see the books. Let me know what books you guys are reading. What poets are you checking out? I would love to have some new poets to explore, some new poetry to play with and to sink my teeth into. So if you guys have some books of poetry or certain poets that you are looking at now too, in the messages below, let me know so I can explore them too. I would love that. Thinking of you all. Going to continue to make, a little bit more video wise than normal, just to stay connected with you all and to offer safe space. And also because I do have a little more time too. My in-person practice isn't happening right now. It's all online. So it's a new experience for all of us at this time, I think. Sending you much love and many blessings, and I will see you guys in the next video. Bye.